Another quarterback is set to visit Syracuse.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome in to Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And folks, let's just start off with the news. How about that? According to On3's Hayes Fawcett, former Virginia quarterback Anthony Colandrea, who's in the transfer portal right now, will visit Syracuse sometime next week. So, on today's show, we are going to break down whether or not he is a fit for the Orange, as well as a brief bio of Anthony Colandrea. We're going to talk about the preferred quarterback options that are being linked to Syracuse. And then later on in the podcast, we're going to talk about maybe the less preferred options, guys that, yeah, they're being linked to Syracuse right now, but maybe they should probably just stay away from. It's more of maybe a scenario, hopefully, of crossing your T's and dotting your I's, making sure that you get this quarterback right for 2025 and maybe even beyond that. That's what's coming up on the podcast today. Before we get to everything, this episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. So, On3 is reporting. On3 is a major recruiting service. They are very reliable, okay? That Anthony Colandrea, the starter for Virginia the last 2 years, is visiting Syracuse next week. We don't know exactly what day. We just know that he is visiting the Orange. He also has other visits, okay? So I don't think this is going to be, again, a scenario where he visits Syracuse and then he puts pen to paper. In fact, the Orange, as of right now, would be his third visit because he's got a visit to Ole Miss on December 14th and Pitt on December 16th. Colandrea, for those that don't know, he is 6 foot, 185 pounds, and he's got 2 years of college eligibility, which we have talked about on the podcast. If you can get a guy for multiple years, that would be outstanding. While it's not guaranteed you would have him for multiple years, it's still better than one and done, right? Obviously, all things considered, you would take the more talented option, but we prefer probably 2 or more years rather than a 1-year rental. Anthony Colandrea has been the starter for Virginia the past 2 seasons. And his 2023 and 2024, if you just look at his numbers, they're practically identical seasons. The numbers match up across the board. So that's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because while he's not getting worse, he's not regressing, he's also not progressing. He kind of was just the same guy last season. So in 19 total games the past 2 years, here are his numbers. 62% completion rate, so it's okay, 62%. 4,000 yards, again, that's okay. It's not the greatest in 19 games. It's over 200 a game, though. It's not bad. 26 touchdowns to 20 interceptions. That's a lot of interceptions for only 19 games. And as I said, it's 2023 and 2024, they are practically identical. Now, the thing that is kind of intriguing, I guess, about Anthony Colandrea is that he's got some mobility to him. Actually, he's a lot more mobile than his numbers would indicate. Over the past 2 years, he's accumulated over 500 rushing yards, which is pretty good considering that in college football, I've said this before on the podcast before, rushing stats in college football are stupid when it comes to quarterbacks because if a quarterback gets sacked, it counts as negative rushing yards. In the NFL, it does not. I digress. The point being is that he really has rushed for a lot more than 500, but when you get sacked, you lose all those yards. So 500 is actually a pretty good total over the last 2 years. And the thing with Virginia, if you just watch a little bit of them, is that they would call design run plays for Anthony Colandrea. And this is also a guy that can get outside the pocket, extend plays, and make throws on the run. And in fact, when I have been watching him recently, ever since finding out the news that he was going to visit Syracuse, he actually looks a lot more mobile than I thought. He's a lot faster than I thought. I'm not going to sit here and call him Lamar Jackson, okay? He's not Lamar Jackson. I mean, nobody really is. But he's a lot faster. He's got really quick feet. That's what I know. He kind of runs like a little rugrat. I mean, I also don't want to make the comparison to Kyler Murray, but Kyler Murray is someone who runs like he's a rugrat out there. Anthony Colandrea is kind of the same way, except I don't think he has the same athleticism as Kyler Murray, but you get the point. This is someone that's sneaky athletic, sneaky fast, someone who Virginia would run, design, run plays for. And overall, he's pretty mobile. And especially a guy for his stature. He's 6 foot, 185 pounds. Congratulations, you're bigger than me. I'm not that big. I'm like 5'8", 5'9" on a good day, a $140 on a good day. So I obviously can't play football. I mean, 6 foot, 185 is honestly not that much bigger. It's bigger, but not too much bigger. You better be pretty mobile if you're going to be that small. And he is. Thank goodness. This is not someone who just, if you get him, he's just going to sit in the pocket, because he can't take that type of punishment. This is not Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord was a big dude. Okay, he's big. He can sit there in the pocket and take punishment. Colandrea, not necessarily the case. So he's got good mobility, which is maybe the biggest green flag of Anthony Colandrea. One thing that I have noticed about him, he's got a very similar issue to a lot of quarterbacks when they're running. Is there a coach that's going to tell him to slide? I mean, seriously. Go look up Anthony Colandrea highlights of him running. The dude doesn't slide. Get down. That is what I always tell quarterbacks when they are running. Get down. It's not worth it. Maybe if you're fighting for the goal line, maybe if it's 4th down and you're fighting for that 1st down. Other than that, it's not worth it. And we can sit here and admire toughness. Wow, he's so tough. Yeah, it's all fun and games until they get hurt because they didn't slide. And I understand that just because you slide, it doesn't mean that a defender can't do something dirty to you. We saw that last week on Sunday with Trevor Lawrence. He slid down and a Houston defender decided, what? I don't care. I'm going to hit him anyway and knock him out maybe for the year. And that guy got suspended 3 games. But if it comes to that, it comes to that. The point being is that with Anthony Colandrea, while he is really mobile, this is someone who a coach needs to sit here and tell him, you need to slide. Period. Okay? Overall thoughts on him. I'm going to tell you later on in the podcast where I would group him in terms of preferred quarterback options and less preferred quarterback options. I'll tell you what I like about him right now. I like that he's got ACC experience. This is someone who started back-to-back years in the ACC, which is great because he knows what it's like to play in the conference. There is a big difference between, if we're talking like Kaidon Salter here, he's being linked to Syracuse, right? He's set to visit this week. Don't know what day, but he's coming from Liberty. There's a big difference between Liberty and the ACC. What is it? Conference USA they're in? Big difference. Anthony Colandrea coming from the ACC. It's a transfer within the ACC. So that's good. And the other thing is that I mentioned off the top, he's got 2 years of eligibility left. So in theory, again, it's a theory, you could have him for multiple seasons. You could. I dispelled that myth the other day that it's not with Rickie Collins, but in theory, you would have him for multiple years if you were to commit to your team. So overall, I'll give you my thoughts on where he slots in terms of where I would rank him in terms of preferred quarterback options and less preferred quarterback options. But he does have a couple of things that are going for him. ACC experience, he's mobile, and he's got 2 years left of eligibility. So leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you want to see Anthony Colandrea, the former Virginia quarterback the last 2 years, in an orange uniform next season? Leave a comment in the comment section below, because coming up, we are going to talk about the preferred QB options for Syracuse. We're going to talk mostly about guys they've been linked to. One guy came off the board. We're also going to get into wild card options. These are guys who I haven't seen anything linked to, but maybe guys they should go after. That's coming up and more on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Basketball season is in full swing, whether it's the NBA, college, like going to Syracuse games. They're typically pretty exciting. And the way I get tickets for games is by using Gametime. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. My favorite feature is the curated deals. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime, and you can download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse. And folks, if you like what you're hearing, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're actually closing in on 3,000 subscribers. We're almost there. So if you like what you're hearing, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We are talking about quarterbacks again on this edition of the Locked On Syracuse podcast. I just went over the Virginia quarterback, Anthony Colandrea. He's set to visit Syracuse next week. We don't know exactly what day, but as of right now, he's going to be his third visit. He's taking a visit to Ole Miss and Pitt before Syracuse. So we talked about Anthony Colandrea. Now let's get into preferred QB options in the transfer portal. I think that this kid from Liberty, Kaidon Salter, he is my number one on the board right now. Number one of all the guys that have been linked to Syracuse, I should say. Kaidon Salter. Multiple reports from 24/7 Sports and On3 have said that Salter is visiting Syracuse this week. They didn't say what day, so it could have already happened. It could be happening right now. It could happen tomorrow, Saturday, I should say Friday, Saturday, Sunday, whatever it is. But he is visiting Syracuse at some time this week. Okay, that's what the reports say. Now, what I do find interesting about Kaidon Salter, one of those teams that was looking in on him was Florida State. I think they were set to get a visit, or they were eyeing a visit with him. But they just got Thomas Castellanos, and that's hilarious. They're going to stink next year. Again. Ugh, if you're a Seminole fan, I feel so sorry for you. I mean, I get 1 year of punishment's bad, but now 2 years of punishment? Now you get Thomas Castellanos? Really? Enjoy 6 wins or at best. But anyway, they got Thomas Castellanos. Are they going to be in on Kaidon Salter still? Are they going to get both? Maybe, because I wouldn't guarantee Castellanos a starting spot, and I think Salter's better than him anyway, but that was just something interesting that I found. It was last night that Castellanos to Florida State. I was like, wow, okay, so they must not be in on Salter? Maybe, I don't know. But I did a whole podcast on Salter recently, and you can check it out after this. 44 combined touchdowns in 2023. And I understand that he regressed last year. I get it. But you have to remember, he's playing at Liberty, and they lost their top wide receiver in CJ Daniels, who, by the way, is back in the transfer portal after a year with LSU. So I'm willing to kind of give that break to Salter, being like, okay, he regressed. Well, they're at Liberty. They don't exactly get the most, they don't exactly get the greatest talent in the world to support a guy with. They lost CJ Daniels and they didn't replace him one lick. They didn't even try. He would be a quote-unquote rental because he's only got 1 year of eligibility, and it would require Syracuse to change up their offensive scheme a little bit. This is not a player that you can sit here and say, let's make him do the same things that Kyle McCord just did. But if you change up your offensive scheme a little, which, by the way, we're in December, now is the time to do it, you could be getting a really, really good player in Kaidon Salter. I like his floor because while his floor is not great, I actually said his floor is Thomas Castellanos. His ceiling is really high. So if you can get somewhere within that range, preferably on the higher end, I think Kaidon Salter, to me, remains as the number one option for Syracuse of the guys that have been linked to the Orange. In total, there have been 4 of them. Connor Weigman is another. There's just one problem with Connor Weigman. He's the transfer from Texas A&M. He's off the board. He committed to Houston last night, and good for him. I don't take anything away from him. On3 was connecting Syracuse and Weigman together. I made a whole podcast really about Connor Weigman and how he could be a decent fit. Fran Brown had said that if he entered the portal, that they would reach out. I think he's like one of the first few quarterbacks to come off the board. There was another guy that went to Duke. So that option's gone. There will not be Connor Weigman for Syracuse next year. He's off the board. He's at Houston now. But I had to address it. He would have been in one of the preferred quarterback options because I do like his upside as well. He doesn't have a high floor. His floor is pretty low, but his ceiling is up there. And I think with the right offense, right offensive scheme, the right coaching, maybe even the right weapons, he can thrive at Houston. But the point being, he's at Houston now. And then there is a wild card for preferred quarterback options. Is there someone out there in the portal right now that Syracuse can go after that they're not being linked to as of this recording, which it's December 12th at 2:24 p.m. Eastern? There are plenty of guys. Fernando Mendoza from Cal is in the portal. I think he would make a lot of sense. He's another guy like Colandrea that's got ACC experience, 2+ year starter. But in all likelihood, he's going to end up at Miami. You can check out Locked On Canes after this. There are just so many ties between I said Carlos Mendoza. That's the Mets skipper. Fernando Mendoza, excuse me. There's just so many ties between him and Miami. So I would love him in a Syracuse uniform. I think it would be a great fit. He's a pro style guy, but I don't see them beating out Miami if Miami wants him. And then the other one is Washington State's John Mateer. There are two problems with Mateer. I mean, he's an awesome player, but there's two issues. He's technically not in the portal yet as of right now. There was a report that came out there that he intends to enter the portal, but until you're actually in the portal, you are not in the portal. And John Mateer from Washington State is not in the portal yet. But let's say he does enter the portal, and I think it's likely he will. He's going to maybe be the belle of the ball. This might be the top quarterback in the portal this offseason. This guy's a stud. So it's not to say that Syracuse isn't. Look, I have said repeatedly that I think the Orange are actually in great shape to land a top quarterback because of what they did with Kyle McCord and kind of resurrecting his image. But there are other programs that have developed quarterbacks well, that have gotten transfers and developed them well as well, that have deeper budgets. So when we're talking about a guy like John Mateer, do I imagine maybe he takes a look at Syracuse? But it's going to be really tough to get him. The competition for him is going to be fierce. So those are the two issues. He's not technically in the portal, and competition is going to be tough for a guy like John Mateer. Hopefully they can get him, though. So overall, when you're looking at the preferred quarterback options, number one is Kaidon Salter. It's not only realistic, but he's also available. He's available, and it's realistic. Connor Weigman, but he went to Houston, so that's off the board. And then a wild card name out there, Fernando Mendoza would be great, but probably Miami. And then John Mateer would be great, but not in the portal, and there's going to be a lot of competition. So leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you prefer Salter as your number one guy in the transfer portal? Are you bummed that Connor Weigman is no longer an option? And how do you feel about any wild cards? Is there a name that's out there that you want to see Syracuse go after in the portal? Let me know in the comment section below. Now, coming up, we're going to talk about the other two quarterbacks that the Orange are linked to. And these are guys, yes, it's going to include Anthony Colandrea. These are guys who I really do not prefer. So that's coming up on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And Syracuse football is playing in the Holiday Bowl against Washington State on December 27th. And FanDuel currently has Syracuse now as 7.5-point favorites. The line has moved from 6.5 to 7.5. And I think it's in large part because Kyle McCord yesterday confirmed that he's playing in the bowl game. So they're going to have their number one quarterback, John Mateer from Washington State, we just talked about. He intends to enter the transfer portal. So I don't know if he's going to play in the bowl game. In fact, I would say it's probably unlikely. You can do with that information what you will, but before you bet it, just make sure you know. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse. And folks, we're talking quarterbacks again here on the Locked On Syracuse podcast. We just talked about Anthony Colandrea in the first segment, talked about some preferred quarterback options. Now it's time to get to less preferred quarterback options. In total, the Orange have been connected to in some way, shape, or form to 4 quarterbacks in the transfer portal. Kaidon Salter is my number 1 choice. My number 2 choice was Connor Weigman. Connor Weigman last night, he committed to Houston, so he's off the board. But he was my number 2. As far as my 3 and 4, that's what I'm giving you right now. Okay? I do not really love Anthony Colandrea. I don't love the option, and the reason why I don't love it is because I do not really see the upside here. This is not, you cannot convince me that there is a ton of upside with Anthony Colandrea. I just don't see it. He's had 2 full seasons as the Virginia starter, and I guess that's good that he's got ACC experience and he's got multiple years of eligibility, but his numbers have not been great the last 2 years at Virginia. In fact, I want to say in 2023 at one point he got benched. When I compare him to a guy like Kaidon Salter, I view Salter as someone that's got a really high ceiling. You can convince me that Kaidon Salter is going to be really good, that he can take Syracuse to the next level, that he can take them from being maybe a bowl team to definitely a bowl team, or a roster that is definitely a bowl team to a college football playoff. The point being is that he's someone that can elevate your team to a tier above what they should be. That's in large part why I loved Kyle McCord so much with Syracuse, because it's not to knock the rest of the roster, but at the same time, he elevated the Orange from a program that at best would just try to make a bowl to, hey, no, they got 9 wins in the regular season. And if they were an SEC team, they probably would have gotten consideration for the college football playoff. And I'm not saying they should have gotten consideration for the college football playoff, but you get the point. Kaidon Salter is someone that could take you to the next tier. Anthony Colandrea, the only thing that he has proven in the ACC is that he is average at best. He's average at best. And I think if Syracuse were to get him, I wouldn't guarantee him the starting spot. I would not. I would have him battle with Jakari Williams. Now, Fran Brown and the staff can say that it's going to be a competition no matter who they bring in. But let's be real. If they got a guy like Kaidon Salter, he's going to be the starter. Okay? There's no question. Anthony Colandrea? No. That's a legit quarterback competition. Now, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it is a good thing that we come to learn that we played Jakari Williams. He ends up being great. But you're not guaranteeing the starting spot. And B, if he is the starter, I don't see Syracuse winning anything substantial with him. I think at best, you're just hoping to go 6-6 with Anthony Colandrea. For what it's worth, Virginia the last 2 seasons, 3-9 and 5-7. They haven't even made a bowl. And I know that it's more than just quarterback play. It also has to deal with the coaching staff and the roster. I get all of that. There's more than just quarterback play, but that's my point. You put Kyle McCord on Virginia this season, they're a bowl team. And I'm not saying in the portal we have to get someone who's as good as Kyle McCord, but you see what I'm saying? You need someone that is going to have a decent enough floor that you'll make a bowl and a ceiling to the point where you could go a lot higher than that. And Anthony Colandrea, you're really hoping for 6-6. I don't see really any upside here. I just don't see it. I'm sorry. Those are my honest thoughts on Anthony Colandrea. I think he's average at best in the ACC, and if I'm the Orange, I'm staying away from him. But he is my third choice because at least he has started games. Rickie Collins is number 4. And I think as we keep going with the transfer portal and as we see more quarterbacks maybe that the Orange get linked to, he's going to keep sliding down the list. Rickie Collins, I spoke about him yesterday in a mini podcast. I don't love him. I think I'm lower on him than a lot of people because a lot of people, I think, see LSU and they think, well, he was at LSU and he was a former top prospect at LSU. He must be really good. I don't buy it. I don't buy it with him because he wasn't really the backup at LSU. He was the third stringer. When Nussmeier had to come out, Garrett Nussmeier, the starter at LSU, now for next season as well, when he had to come out briefly for injuries down the stretch against Florida and against Oklahoma, it was not Rickie Collins who was coming into the game. It was Vanderbilt transfer A.J. Swan. Now, if you're LSU, who do you want to actually play? Think about it. This guy was a 4-star recruit to your program in 2023. Okay, he was a really good high school prospect. You want to give him any opportunity you can to play games. But the coaching staff at LSU, maybe they miscalculated, maybe they were wrong. But by the end of the year, he wasn't even the backup. Are you kidding? And I know he's got 3 years of eligibility left, which is all great. That's cool. So he could end up like Malik Murphy. Look, if he has one season like Malik Murphy just did at Duke, I'll take it. But my point being is that ignore the 3 years because Malik Murphy had multiple years of eligibility. He transferred from Texas to Duke to become a starter. He started one season. He was really good. And now he's back in the portal. Who's to say that Rickie Collins can't do the same thing if he were to commit to Syracuse? Which, by the way, I hope that scenario would occur if Rickie Collins were to commit. He comes to Syracuse, he wins the starting job because he wouldn't guarantee it to him. He has a good year, and then if he enters the portal, so be it. But I ignore the years with him because he's coming from LSU. He obviously wants to start somewhere. Maybe Syracuse can give him that opportunity, and then who's to say he can't re-enter the portal? So overall, I'm not high on Rickie Collins. I'm just not. So those are the less preferred quarterback options. Anthony Colandrea, who we let off the podcast talking about, I really don't see the ceiling. With Rickie Collins, there is a ceiling, I guess, but the floor is that he can't even start games. And I would say my number one choice right now is still Kaidon Salter. We'll see who else enters the portal. We'll see who else the Orange get linked to in the coming days and weeks. As far as what is coming up on the podcast going forward, we got Poll Friday tomorrow. I promise we're not talking about quarterbacks again. Aside from quarterback, I'm going to be answering the question, the biggest need for Syracuse football in the portal, not counting quarterback. Okay? So that's what's coming up tomorrow. On Saturday, Syracuse basketball is playing an old Big East rival. I don't want to say their name, but they play at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. And there will be a full post-game reaction podcast. And hopefully Syracuse puts on their big boy pants and they actually win a game against, I guess, a real team. A team that's not mid-major. How about that? So that's what's coming up on Saturday. Folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel because, guys, we are closing in on 3,000 subscribers. So if you really like this, hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel grow a ton and reach all Syracuse Orange fans. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. And everyone, take care.